So for the first learning module of Lecture 6, we'll look at how layers are created in AutoCAD, along with the general use of layers within engineering drawing. So layers are really just an organizational tool within any engineering drawing workflow, including AutoCAD. When you look at the user interface of AutoCAD in a professional drawing, you will typically have multiple layers, and you can kind of view those, since you only see one screen, of course, as being transparent stacks that are stacked upon one upon another. So we previously introduced the concept of layers when we talked about our helper lines, particularly the raise and construction lines. And remember that both of those, at least in one dimension, weren't bounded. They went on forever. And their utility was really just to help us in the drawing process. And because of that, it makes sense that we wouldn't want to include them within our final prints. So we said that isolating them on a layer would be a nice organizational tool, because we would be able to essentially, as we'll see in a minute, turn them off during the printing process. But beyond that, since thinking back to what we talked about in the last lecture on the concept of orthographic projections, an engineering drawing routinely contains different line types, each of which contains unique information. Layers can also allow us to kind of organize all of our particular line types that we're using in a drawing. So you can kind of see over on the left there, we have a dimensional layer, we have some center line layers, these sorts of things, visible line layer. The one thing that I would say is in most engineering drawings, again, since there's such a push towards standardization throughout engineering in order to be efficient, that those names are oftentimes common. Not all the time and not across organizations, but don't be surprised if you see a common layering structure with the names and line styles consistent across various drawings. So going back, kind of revisiting that concept of what I just said, not surprising to see a construction layer where all of your helper lines that we just spoke of would be included. So I kind of already said that point about the layers being used to organize different types of lines. And that's kind of the figure on the left. The names are cut off, but you can kind of see what the book means by calling a drawing a transparent stack of layers. So in terms of how you create layers in AutoCAD, so with respect to what I would ask you in this course, I would actually ask you why layers are useful. We just talked about the organizational component of isolating certain line types or allowing you to isolate construction or helper lines from printing. In addition, I would like you to know how to create layers. And on the homework, I'm going to ask you to kind of create a couple layers within a drawing and include a screenshot showing me that you understand the process. So within the ribbon, there's actually a panel called Layers on the Home tab. And there's two things you want to be familiar with. This Layers Property button, which will open a new GUI that allows you to create and manipulate your layers, along with this pull-down menu that will allow you to toggle between layers when you're actually in the drawing process. So here is what the Layers Property Manager looks like. That's that new GUI that jumps up that allows you to create new layers along with modify existing layers. So you can see there's a lot of functionality built in here. All that I really want you to know is how to create new ones, how to name them, and new ones beyond the default layer. So layer 0 that you see here is the default layer. The other thing you should be familiar with is the term current layer, which means exactly what it sounds like, the layer that is active and that you're drawing on right then within AutoCAD. So what I'd like you to do, kind of just to show that you have a basic understanding, and the homework problem will even be simpler than this, but is to go into AutoCAD, create a new drawing, and create these layers beyond the default layer. So the default layer will already be there. We're going to create 4 new layers, name them visible layer, hidden layer, centerline layer, and dimension layer. And we'll change the color, just one of the properties of the lines within these layers. On the homework, I'll ask you to extend that a little bit and actually change the line type as well. So let me go to AutoCAD and let me open a new drawing. And you notice I'm on the Home tab by default. And here is my ribbon, and here is my Layers panel. There's the drop-down menu we mentioned to toggle between layers. Notice that now only the default layer 0 is there. The way that I create new layers is to click on the Layers property, and a new GUI should ideally pop up. And like everything in AutoCAD, you could do this from the command line as well. If you don't know what you're doing, just hover over, and you'll notice that you get a pop-up like always that provides some help. Here's how you create a new layer. So I think one of the ones we wanted was visible layer. And not generally a good idea in programming, of which AutoCAD is a subset. It's just you're doing it through point and click. To name things with spaces, so if you want to camel case them and take the space out, that's okay. So if you notice, I think we were asked to make the visible layer red. So I will go back to AutoCAD and go back to my Layers Property Manager, which is hiding here. I'll expand it. and I will left click on the color. And if you notice, I can change it to any color I want. Generally speaking, it's good practice to use these standard colors here in the lower left, and you can actually refer to those by name, and I'll show you. Let me click on this and click OK. If you notice it says green, I could come in here and just type red and change it to red as well. So my mouse is being a little bit shady at the moment. So we had visible layer. What else were we asked to create? Hidden layer in blue. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but the one thing I would mention is, so let's go to blue here. I'll just type it in rather than rely on that. So on the homework, what I'm going to ask you to do is just take a screenshot. So the easiest thing if you're on a Windows machine is just hit print screen and then go into like Paint or a tool like this and just crop out the layers display. And that's what I want you to print and include in your homework. That way I can see that you knew how to create the layer structure that I asked for. So in addition to watching this video, I'm also going to post the video from the book, which is a tutorial on layer creation, which we'll get into it in a little bit more detail.